Today I'm going to install this Larson Signature model full glass storm door here on the front of my house. Picked this up at Lowe's a little while ago, so I'm going to pull it out of the box and get to it here. I want to point out first of all that this is not a how-to video, it's a how I did it video. Basically I'm just kind of documenting what I'm doing, so it's not a strict how-to video or endorsed by anybody. So having said that, I'll start by opening the box. So first, a couple things to note. This thing is supposedly made in USA, which is kind of a neat thing these days, especially having been purchased from a big box store. And the second thing to note is that the box has this easy open feature from the looks of it. So you just pull this and kind of zip it down. Should be able to open the box pretty easily that way. Okay, with the box opened up like that, the instructions were down at the bottom, and I've pulled those out, and there's the typical instruction card, warranty card, all that, some weather stripping, and some clip or something. So I think what I'll do is go through the instruction process here first, just to familiarize myself with this thing. I've never installed a door like this before, so this is new to me too. Okay, I've got the instructions here taped up on the wall, and there are two different methods or sides on the instructions. One is for left hand side and one is for right hand side. So the right hand side is on the back, the left hand side is on the front, which is the way that I'm going to be installing the door. So with the door completely removed from the carton, the first thing that I'm going to do here is remove these plastic shipping clips. A couple of them look like they've already fallen out. And get the glass and screen kind of set aside here for now. Okay, looks like the next step is to take the hinge plate, and for a left-hand hinge, like I'm doing, install it against the door jamb, sort of like this. So here's the door jamb, kind of extends out from the main jamb here, and then this part of the hinge plate butts up against that with the weather stripping facing out and this other lip flush against the outer edge of the door. So then the instructions say to slide this all the way up as high as you can and mark the top hole up there with a pencil. So I'm going to do that, but I'm going to shut the camera off and I'm going to get a step stool because I'm too short for that. Okay, and then the next step is to take this screw from bag A and place it at the location marked on the door frame, but not screw it all the way in. They say to leave about 1/8 of an inch of it exposed. Okay, and you can see I've got the location marked and the screw installed just as the instructions indicate. The next step is to install the hinge rail on the door frame itself, and I've got this lined up sort of in this arrangement with the hinge rail oriented like this, with the weather stripping facing the door but with that sort of lip on the top, and then the hinge you can see fits in the groove in the door frame and then lines up with these pre-tapped holes or pre-drilled holes in the door frame. So it'll kind of sit like that. And the other hinge holes don't have corresponding holes in the door, but the supplied screws, which were in bag B, are self-tapping screws, so those should just go right into the metal. So I'm going to install this thing now. I think what I'm going to do is put this side in first with that locating hole, and then there's another one on the other side, just to kind of get it held in place, and then I'll put the rest of the screws in that don't have holes. Okay, just to show real quick, I've got these holes started, or these screws started, but not completely tightened. One on the top end, and the other one on the bottom end over there. So then I'll just flip up the rest of the hinges and mount those in. Okay, and there it is with all the screws installed. That didn't take too long or too much effort. In fact, the drill on my old cordless drill here is kind of wearing out, and even with the weak battery, it was able to put those all in with no problem. Okay, so the next thing to do is install one of these plastic clips on the bottom of the hinge rail. And of course the one I'm going to use is marked with an L. Okay, so it looks like this thing just slides in, kind of like this. Okay, so now that the hinge rail extender is in place down there at the bottom of the door, the next thing to do is lift it up and mount it onto that temporary hold-down screw that I put in first. Okay, with the door hung temporarily on that screw, now I'll tighten that screw down the rest of the way, and then I'll put one in the bottom as well. Okay, now I'll break open bag C and take one of the screws out of there and put it in the very bottom of the hinge. Okay, I've got the bottom screw in place, and then I've extended the hinge extender down to the sill plate here. And now the next step is to just install the rest of the screws. Okay, now that I've got all the screws on the inner part of the hinge plate installed, I can now install the screws on the outer side into the door. Okay, so then after that's all set, I'm going to take and install this small piece of weather stripping to kind of complete this section here. Okay, and that's just got a pressure sensitive adhesive. You just peel that off and then stick it on here. And in my case I didn't have to cut it, but if this was shorter I could have just cut this with a pair of scissors, but mine kind of was the right length as it was. Okay, so the next step is to install the drip rail here, or the drip edge, at the top of the sill. And to do that, you can see I've got my stepladder out here now. So this just is going to sit right up here, flush with the top of the sill, with the weather stripping, you know, kind of mating up to the other weather stripping on the side there. Okay, so it looks like the trick to getting the drip edge aligned is to put it in place and then close the door and then kind of align it so that there's an even amount of gap between it and the top of the door. That'll help keep the door from hitting it when it closes or opens, and will also help take care of any unsquareness in the door frame. Here's the drip edge all installed with the 3 screws and flush to the door. So now I'll install the latch plate. Okay, next up is to install the latch plate. That just goes on the door frame kind of like this. And I think the first thing I'm going to do is line up the top to the drip edge and screw in that top screw. And then I'll align this to the storm door so that it's square to the latching surface of the storm door and not so much to the frame. I think even though this is a fairly new house, I think the door frame on this house is a little bit out of square. So like I said, the trick is to line it up to the new door and not the old frame. Okay, I almost forgot to install the plastic extender here. So I've got the top screw in place. This would have been easier to do before putting this in, but I don't want to take it out. So I've got that up there, and then I'll kind of just set that where I think it's going to go, and now I'll put the rest of the screws in. Okay, so you can see here, I did like I said I was going to. I got the top aligned to the drip edge, and then kind of tried to maintain the alignment along the edge of the door here, and then I secured the bottom screw just to keep everything in place. And now I'll go back and put the rest of the screws in and just get that buttoned up. Okay, so I've got all the screws in place now, and the last thing to do on the latch plate is to install this little piece of weather stripping at the bottom. And again, looks like this one fits, but if I had to cut it I could, just with a pair of scissors. Okay, so there that is, all installed with the adhesive, and on to the next step. The next step appears to be to install the handle, which is everything is located in this box, including the instructions for how to install it. So I'm going to have a look at those and then move on with installing it. Okay, so the first thing to check in installing the latch is whether or not the striker is oriented the right way for your installation. And the way this came in the package, this is oriented for a right hinge door according to the diagram. So I need to flip it around for my installation. So in order to do that, it looks like you just take out this screw. Okay, with the screw out, the plate comes off. So I'll just spin this around the other way, and then I'll put this back on and put the screw back in, and we should be ready for the next step after I tighten that up. Okay, with the striker turned around the right way, now it looks like we just have to install this in the door here. Oops. And of course that's probably easier to do with both of your hands free, but we'll just set it in there for now and see what the next step is. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is install this lock cylinder in through the door and the latch mechanism. And there's a threaded hole here that's going to line up with this hole here in the latch plate. Put this through. Sort of lined up. And it says before tightening that fully to extend the deadbolt. So I've done that, and that's tight. Oh, okay, I guess I didn't extend the deadbolt. Anyway, looks like that's what you're supposed to do. Okay, the next step is to install or assemble the handles to the outer handle to the outer trim plate. So the first thing to do is to install this black stepped washer onto the handle with the stepped part facing up or towards the inside of the handle shaft. Then I'm going to put this through the hole in the handle like that and get it to stay. And then once that's through, I'm going to use this white nylon flat washer, put that over the handle shaft, and then use this D clip with the flat part of the D facing up. I'm going to slide that over the shaft here, I don't know if you can see that, and lock it into the groove that's in the end of the handle shaft. And then I'm going to spin the flat part so that it's even with one of the flats on the inner square shaft there so it doesn't interfere. And then I'm going to use this square spindle. I'm going to put that in and seat it all the way in. And then the last thing to do now, I think, is tighten up the handle with the supplied Allen wrench. And I guess that ought to do it. Okay, the next thing to do is put the outer handle mechanism in place. And to do that, the first thing I want to do is get the shaft here, the square shaft, oriented correctly to the latch. So the square is going to line up to the square latch hole here, and then with the handle kind of facing to the left so that it operates down. And then also I'm going to line up these bosses that are on the plate to these two holes that are in the door, as well as the hole for the lock mechanism. So this is maybe a little bit fiddly. You might have to jimmy things around to get it to line up. But there you can kind of see it lines up. And pull the handle down, it releases the lever and works. So now I guess I'll get the inner part assembled. Okay, next I'm going to take the inner handle, I'm going to put the black washer on it there, and put this over the shaft, the square shaft, just like that, and then hold these two together as best I can, and use the Allen wrench to just tighten that down on the shaft. I'm going to double check the outer one too while I'm at it. Okay, that should be good. And now everything looks like it's working as it should. So on to the next step. And before I go on to the next step, I just want to mention one thing that I probably should have pointed out before, and that is before installing the hardware and all that, it'd be a good idea to check for interference to any of your existing door hardware. I don't have a problem here, obviously, but if you have a problem, you may want to find it before you get too far along in the process. Okay, now the next step is to drill 1/8" pilot holes in these holes here into the door so that the two last screws that hold the latch on can be mounted. Okay, so now with the pilot holes drilled, I should be able to just install these screws. And I'm just going to use a screwdriver to put these in instead of the power drill. Okay, I think that does it for the latch. And I think the only thing left now is to put the striker plate on the door. Okay, next I'm going to line up the striker, and I'm going to take it here and I'm going to place it against the latch so that this surface is flush with the latch, like this. And then I'm just going to hold it there with my finger. I'm going to close the door, and I'm going to just mark on the door frame with my pencil where the top and bottom of the striker are. Then I can kind of transfer those lines over and line it up on the inside of the door jamb where it needs to be. Okay, next I'm going to take the striker and I'm going to line it up to my marks that I made roughly here, like this, and then I'm going to just mark where the screw holes are, and then I'll drill pilot holes somewhere in the middle of those for the screws. Okay, and then just to make sure the drill doesn't wander too much, I'm going to use this punch to punch a small starting point for the drill. I don't want to hit that too hard and dent the trim piece here, but I do want to prevent the drill from wandering. Yeah, I didn't quite do it. Okay, that should do it. Okay, now with the holes drilled and all the marks removed, I should be able to just put this in place. So now, with the striker plate all set, I'll check the door latch one more time and then move on to the next step. Okay, that seems like it latches pretty well. I'll just test the deadbolt there, and that seems to work. So, on to the next. Okay, the next step is to assemble and install this bottom sweep, as it's called, or door expander. and the first thing to do is put the rubber sweep gasket in to this channel here. And you can see that the channel is sort of C-shaped, and this should fit right in place. And according to the instructions, it's a good idea to use a little bit of soap or soapy water. Okay, so I've got the sweep installed on the extender and cut to length. It was a little bit longer than the extender, and you can see how it just kind of slides in there. Now in the manual they recommend crimping this over so it doesn't come out again, but I'm not going to do that in the case that I want to ever replace this. I'm just going to leave it. I don't think it's going to come out. I think it'll be fine. So then the next thing I've done is I've put the extender on with the screw holes facing the inside, and I've got it sort of lined up along the bottom there so that the sweeper makes good contact with the bottom sill. In my particular case, the bottom sill isn't completely flat. It's a little bowed in the middle, so I kind of had to make some compromises, but I think it's good. I think it's going to keep most of the draft out. Okay, so the last thing to do with the extender here is now use the self-tapping screws included with bag D and just install them in the bottom of the door there. Okay, with the door extender and sweeper in place, the next thing to do is to install the screw covers in here. Okay, so it looks like the way to install these trim pieces is to use that straight outer edge first. Lock it in under the groove in the side of the door trim here, and then just kind of push it into place with your finger and it should snap in. I'm not going to put that in permanently. I'm going to start at the top, work my way down, and then cut any extra length. So here it is with the trim pieces installed. Got them on both sides and on the top. And in my particular application, I didn't really even have to trim too much off, just a little off the right one there. And my only gripe with these is that when I was in the store looking at the display model, I could have swore that they were metal in the display model, but either way I guess these are okay. The top one was a little tricky to install. I had to use something to help kind of push it in and lock it into place, but I got it to go. And of course you probably can't see it there in the video, but it's in place. So I think the next step here is going to be to install the closer. Okay, the next step in the process here is to install the closer, which is in its own box here. So I'm going to remove some of these pieces, dig out the instructions, and see what they recommend here. Okay, the first thing that I'm going to do is install the door bracket here for the closer. And this thing has got some text stamped on it that tells you which way to orient it. It says storm door with an arrow, so it's going to mount this way. And I'm going to mount it somewhere in here, down near the bottom. And all the hardware for the closer is located in bag E. Okay, with the bracket in and secured, the next thing to do is to take the closer itself, the bigger one here with the button on it, and remove this yellow clip, and then just install it into the bracket and push the pin, and I'm using the short pin here, through the mechanism. Might need to tap that with a hammer or something here. Maybe I'm just not lined up right. There we go. Okay. Okay, so I've also got the top bracket installed, and I've got the smaller top closer, and I'll install that the same way as the bottom one. I'll pop this yellow bracket off and put the short pin in through the hole. Okay, and then the next step is to put the door brackets onto the closers using the longer pin with the O-ring. And again, it might be a little tough. Oh, that's going now. Once you get it lined up, I guess it goes pretty smooth. I'm not sure if the camera caught that, but you kind of get the idea here. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do from inside the house with the door closed is level these closers and get the bracket lined up to the door and then screw them in. But I think what I'm going to do is drill some pilot holes. So I'm going to level this out. Well, I'm going to level this out and then I'm going to mark the location with a pencil and drill a couple holes. Okay, I've got my holes marked, and I did put a couple small punches there. Okay, and I'll do the same thing on the top. Okay, now with the holes drilled, I should be able to mount these screws. Now that I look at these, I didn't realize this at first, but these are self-tapping screws, so you probably don't need to drill pilot holes. But I guess the pilot holes make it easier anyway, so whatever you want to do. Okay, and now that the clips are installed, or the screws are installed rather, the clips come out and these just get thrown away. Okay, since it's summertime, I'm going to mount the screen in this door. But I assume the mounting of the glass is the same. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't see why it would be any different. But at any rate, I'm going to take the screen with the seam side facing outside, towards the outside, and I'm just going to work this in kind of behind the door hinge, or the door handle, and the closers, and get it secured in the grooves there. And I'm going to need both hands for that, so I'll have to. Okay, so now I'm going to install the retaining clips here, and I'm going to put the text printed side towards the inside of the door and kind of work it into the groove, push it up to the top. And then the trick is to put some pressure on the inside part, and to do that I'm going to use, and of course this is easier with both hands, I'm just trying to show what I'm doing, is I've got this panel tool, automotive panel popper tool, and I'm just going to use this to kind of push in and work this down as I go. And I'm just using this because it's got nice rounded edges and it won't screw up the trim here, but you could use any kind of similar type tool for this. Okay, so you can see I've got the screen molding in place and secure, and I've gone ahead and tried to adjust the closers a little bit here. You can see the door opens up good. It's got a good amount of resistance, and then when I let it go, it closes and latches. Hopefully this video was helpful. Thank you for watching.